Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. It's your host Punam here with a very special guest, Ariv Gupta. Ariv recently published his first book titled What's Real? Poetry for Everyone. We will learn his personal journey, writing process, while he is also going to inspire our teen audience. Welcome, Ariv. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Before I ask you a few questions, please introduce yourself and tell us more about you and what you are doing currently.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I wrote this bio a couple of months ago, and I'm so proud of it. So I'm going to read this as an introduction and then go into what I'm doing currently. It's at the end of my book too. So Ariv Gupta inhabits the space between the 8 and 80-year-old. He's a creator of music, poem, and art, a proud member of the Anti-Tech Tech Club, and most recently, an ultra-endurance athlete. He's also a nationally awarded public speaker and talented procurer of free time. He loves long, windy conversations, laughable periods of confusion, and never having a plan. Due to his eccentricity, some refer to him as the brown Dr. Seuss. Others will tell you he only calls himself that. They're largely correct. So I thought this was hilarious. And to give you a little bit more context, I am a junior in college. I almost autofilled high school in my mind. And I am at UCLA studying computer science and engineering. So splitting my time between going to open mics and trying to tour this book and grow an online platform and brand, while at the same time working as hard as I can to not flunk out of school, which is decently doable, thankfully, because I was given good foundation in high school. So far, so good, and having a lot of fun doing it.
That's amazing, Ariv. I'm so glad the last sentence you said you are having fun. I think that's the most important thing. You're working hard, but you are able to balance and you're having fun. That's awesome. So I wanted to ask you what inspired you to start writing poetry and ultimately publishing this book and the title itself, What's Real? Oh my God, I'm intrigued. So tell us more about your writing journey.
I'm glad you liked the title because I can tell you what that process looked like, and that was an experience and a half to figure out. But I started writing after I started another thing that means a lot to me, which is running every single day. My uncle had been doing it for a long time, and he had pushed me to try myself, and I had done it a couple times and stopped, and eventually during COVID I did. And after about 5 to 6 months of doing it, I discovered this site called Medium, and it allowed me to explore myself as a writer without being confined by the English education system with your introduction, middle, and end of an essay. So because of that, I got the chance to write this little sort of ode to running. And I believe I called it Someday. And it was all about this idea that we push off things that are hard till someday. And why don't we make someday today? And I really enjoyed it and truly enjoyed the response I got from others. I got it published in a sort of Medium publication and was really excited by that. And it meant a lot to me. Eventually, I went and started a publication myself for students called Students X Students with my friends. And that sort of took me down the rabbit hole of writing more and more. I've had wonderful English teachers all my life, especially my high school senior AP literature teacher, Mr. Seaton, who this book is dedicated to. I mean, he was honest with us. And every English teacher I've had has always been incredibly real and open and willing to discuss things that I never thought I could have conversations about. And they were so in touch with themselves and in touch with the abstract parts of the world that when I tried to capture them in normal sentences, I found it very difficult. So when introduced to poetry in my senior year of high school, I thought, hey, this might be a really good way to capture some of the ideas I have without needing to specify them perfectly. So how can I take the feelings I'm feeling and capture them in a way in which they're still open interpretation? Because life as a whole, everything we're doing is incredibly abstract. And the English language is very limited in many ways because there are so many feelings that can't be described. Like there's a Japanese word, yugen, and it's described in English as watching a sun go down or sitting at the same spot while the day passes, or watching birds chirp at each other and playing around. And there's no specific English word for that. And just like that, there are so many sentences that don't do a feeling justice. So poetry was an attempt at doing that, at taking what I couldn't externalize in normal sentences with these abstract phrases. And I love music and rap. In fact, I've probably consumed more music than I have poetry, and I've probably also written, actually this I can confirm, I've written more poetry than I've read in my life. I get a lot of my inspiration from music, and the whole sort of poetry phase slowly began through college. I had a blog that I would work on, and I'd write poetry from time to time when I couldn't figure out how to use sentences to make things happen. And then eventually, about last year, it's been about a year now, I decided to write poetry every day. And you'll see this theme, at least I see this in my life, is these things that I've always sort of attempted to do day by day have sort of worked themselves into these massive, monumental experiences that couldn't have happened if I had sat down one day and decided that's what was going to happen. Like I didn't start running and say, I'm going to go run a half marathon. I didn't start writing poetry because I said I want to write a book. I just started writing every day. And by the end of my fall quarter of my second year of college, I had a book's worth of poetry. And I figured, I've always wanted to write a book. So let me just take these poems, put them in a little Google Doc, and publish them. And here we are.
Wow, that's what an amazing journey. So, what I understand, your teachers inspired you. You were surrounded by your teachers. You could connect with them. You could express your feelings. And you found even language as a barrier sometimes because you felt something, but you were not able to express. And the end result is this beautiful poetry book. So I wanted to ask you, what central themes do you explore in this book? And how do you think they connect with teenagers today?
Yeah. I think it's I mean, the subtitle of the book is Poetry for Everyone. So my hope is that everybody can enjoy it. And I think at the same time, it is poetry about every sort of feeling. But if I had to give you sort of an encapsulation, it is a discovery of the realities that define us as individuals and unite us as a collective. Growing up is something that is very hard to accept is a real thing. And I found it very difficult during the time when I wrote this book. So a lot of what is explored is, how do I work with the only constant in life, which is change? And how do I dance with it and have a relationship with it that is healthier than not? Because we get to decide how we feel and how we live in every single moment. Even if we feel like it's not up to us, we can choose our reactions. So these poems are externalized bits of frustration and feeling that I felt through sort of a 90-day period, plus or minus other pieces. So there's a lot of loving the moment and being here and being present. And I'm the type of person who finds it very hard to leave a poem unfinished, in the sense that I always try and conclude things neatly, because for me, while writing this, it was more therapeutic than anything else, and it helped me conclusively say that things will get better. So every piece navigates a feeling like impermanence, and what does it mean to move on from this physical body into the next one? Or what does it mean to grow up and leave our friends who we had in high school into college? Or what does it mean to feel one way but know that nobody believes that you do? And what does it feel like to feel alone? And what does it feel like to accept that and that be okay? And I can read you sort of a bit of the intro to this book as a good example of maybe the explanation as a whole. So what is real? Right? This sort of goes back to your mentioning the title of the book. What's real? What's real? Many things, but also not many things. Often it is hard to know what is and what isn't. Reality is up to the experiencer. What's real to you may not be real to me, and what's real to me may be preposterous to you. Emphatically grand and painfully abstract are the lines between the two. One moment may make sense of it all, the other may unravel everything. Such is the life of a liver. What's real has no predefined punctuation, capitalization, nor rhythm. Except for a few exceptions, please place emphasis as you desire, because what's real is what you want it to be. The following pages contain a collection of such realities strung together in order of discovery, as life is. Maybe reality is buried beneath these pages. And though I may be blatantly lying to you, there is a magic to the realities traveled and questions left unanswered. They sure do seem real to me. At least, sometimes. Within them, I hope there are strands of real you find and feelings you feel that sharpen the lens through which you experience this moment, your moment. So here is an incomplete beginning, an attempt at piecing together existence written in the form of feeling by an all but perfect being. Here's what's real.
Beautiful, beautiful. What I'm feeling as you were saying in your introduction, even though age-wise you have a younger body, but wisdom-wise you have that wisdom of 80-year-old. You are a person of a feeling and you're expressing your feelings beautifully. You're realizing the real me. What is the ultimate truth? The law of impermanence, constant change, right? Change is the only constant. How am I adjusting, accommodating, accepting the change with love? So beautiful. So I wanted to ask you this question. How do you hope your poetry resonates with young readers? Because, as I said, you're giving very deep message, and we are talking to our young audience via this podcast. So, what message or feelings do you want them to take away from your poetry?
I thought about this a lot when I launched this book. I released it on my birthday, on my 20th birthday, and I got to perform a collection of these poems for my friends during my birthday. And to share that experience with them was so special. What I realized this book has the potential to do, and I didn't necessarily write it or compile it for anybody other than myself. And I think great art deserves to be taken care of that way. It has the potential to, and my hope is that when somebody picks this up, they catch a line or feel something that deeply sort of strikes a chord or moves them or nudges them in a direction they never knew they wanted to go, or reminds them of something they had forgotten, or makes them feel just a little less unlistened to. Because we all feel the same things. It's very difficult to share them sometimes because of the limitations of language, or the limitations of the social constructs and smoke and mirrors we put on top of ourselves. I think every teenager deserves a book of their own, and whatever that looks like. Hopefully they can be inspired, or that flame can be lit within them to write the book they've always wanted to create, and to put power into the phrases that they've always had sitting and laying dormant within them. Everybody is powerful and special and incredible, and I think I feel everyone deserves the opportunity to feel connected to something. And hopefully this gives someone an opportunity to connect to something. And if not, it gives them the opportunity to just consider the following. How do they feel? And that's something I don't think we ask very often, and we could ask a little bit more, especially our generation deserves to be asked how they feel, and deserves to be held within that feeling and to be witnessed for feeling that thing. Because happiness, and I've thought a lot about how I would define it. My working definition is happiness is the feeling of being happy. It's not anything beyond that. Success isn't anything beyond feeling successful. It doesn't matter when we're alone by ourselves, sitting in the middle of the woods, what somebody else thinks of us, or what a magazine wrote about us, or what our parents said we didn't do, or how we even felt we could have done. What is there is there. And to be able to acknowledge and see that for what it is, and to give it a chance to tell us what it wants, to be able to interface with ourselves in a more deeper way. There's so much that has gone missing in our lives because we have put all of these layers on top of ourselves as if we aren't all skin and bone hiding underneath. So giving ourselves the permission to feel and to be and to let go and to receive whatever me is, because that is all there ever was and will be.
So, Arif, if I understand correctly, you are saying each individual on this planet Earth is beautiful regardless of their age, their gender, ethnicity, caste, creed, country, doesn't matter. We are the beautiful creation. We need to feel our feelings, sit with our feelings, accept who we are, go closer to the truth. And everybody's on their journey and they will find who they are really, that real me, right? So you have discovered beautifully and you're inspiring others to do the same. So that's beautiful. I wanted to ask you another question. how do you balance writing with other aspects of, like you said, you are a college student and you do have hobbies. You were mentioning about your running hobby. How do you do all?
Well, but before I answer that, I want to take a second to sort of talk about what you'd sort of mentioned in your reflection earlier, which is people finding the true me or finding the true themselves. The way I look at it is there's nothing to search for. We've spent so much time as a human race thinking about who am I? Who is the authentic version of me? I'm finding myself. I'm trying to. We're already here. We are who we are. Like I think about it as we look for this key to the door that opens up the window to our soul our whole lives, and we forget that the door was already open. The world was already within us and is us, and there's nothing to search for. There's only something to return to. And I think the space and quiet that can allow for that to be an opportunity and for that to be possible is very difficult to have in a very noisy world and in one that it feels like it expects so much of us. And it's mostly returning to what is rather than searching for what isn't. We already know who we are. We just have to accept what is. So the question, and could you remind me what the question was? I'm forgetting the next one.
Not a problem. So, you are absolutely right. I am the destination. I don't need to search anything. But you were mentioning those layers, right? Maybe I forgot who I am and I need to just sit in that quiet space, sacred space, and I am who I am, right? So anyway, the I know like we do have a shortage of time also, but I was asking you, how do you balance? Because you are a student, you have a lot of hobbies. So that's the most of the time complaint I hear from teens who also have busy schedule, even they want to pursue something, but they don't have time. I'm wondering, how do you make time?
I don't really know, to be honest. I don't think I'm a particularly productive person or high functioning. I think I have just become okay with sharing what is created to the world and not obsessing over it too much to the degree of which it never comes out. I feel like this book should have came out 6 to 9 months ago. There's so many other things that happened in my life that I didn't get the chance to do so. I think the excuse is often not beginning, and I find myself jumping into this excuse all the time. It's very rarely that we don't have the time to do it. It's mostly that we think we don't have the time to do the whole thing. By that I mean I don't have time to train for a marathon right now. But I can wake up tomorrow and go run a couple miles or even one. So same thing with writing. I write poetry all the time, mostly because it's a natural byproduct of me being alive. So when I went to Palm Springs a couple weekends ago, I hung out with my friends and I wrote a song and a poem while I was there. And it wasn't because I felt I had to. And sometimes that can be the issue I find, which is I don't have time is mostly code for I don't really want to do the thing. And that's okay. I think I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to force myself to do things I didn't want to do. And often doing hard things is very freeing and very helpful, and discipline equals freedom. And I think on the same token, we ought to allow ourselves the opportunity to rest and not do the thing. So when it comes to balance, to be honest, I don't really know if it exists. I think it takes a level of obsession for what you want to do to make it happen. And I don't think I always have that. I think I sometimes work in sprints where I'll spend a couple of days doing a lot of work and then the next 3 weeks feeling like I did nothing. And I don't think that's a particularly healthy way to do it. And I'm still searching for a balance of my own. And I found over the last couple of weeks, at least, that morning routines of meditation and running and movement and allowing myself more rest than I think I need offers me a greater, more valuable sort of time to actually create than I thought I did. So playing around with different ways of doing things and understanding that there is no perfect way, there are ways in which we can begin. So again, it's mostly beginning, and it's not saying I'm going to begin this tomorrow. It's saying I'm going to do a little bit today, and I think slowly but surely the rock gets chipped away and you're left with diamonds.
That's real, Ariv. Thank you so much for being honest. I'm not perfect and I'm not claiming to be perfect. I'm figuring it out. So beautiful, Ariv. It was truly a pleasure to talk to you, get to know more about you. I'm wishing you lots of success. And I'm sure you will bring your second book very soon. With that, thank you so much for talking to us.
All right, thank you so much. If you liked that poem that you heard earlier, the book's out everywhere. My website's arivgupta.com. Reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And I want to read you one poem to close. And this is what we've been talking about. It's called Genius. Geniuses are made once a millennia, a perfect combination of mom and pop, a symbiotic state of perfection, a sunset made human. The genius embodies purity, finding order in disorder. Our guide from chaos to clear, now or later, they're always here. The eternal constant, the indomitable spirit, that transcendent warmth, that imperfect perfection. Yet the genius rarely travels away from the incandescence to gaze outside their window, bask in the magic they've made. So open the blinds, take in the view as the sun begins to reflect off of you, because you are the genius. Get it? You.
Thanks once again, Ariv. That was beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every Friday, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.